Hi everyone, welcome back. This is session 6, Stress Management Continued. Originally, I had intended this to be a 2-part session, but I think that it warrants a little more analysis and a little more attention. So please don't forget to press like and subscribe. Thank you. Hi everyone, welcome back for session 6, Stress Management. I thought that I could add a little more information to this session before we close it off and move on to session 7. So last time we discussed and defined what stress actually is. A stressor is our body's physical and emotional reaction to any event that causes stress for that person, regardless of what that event may be. So basically, knowing and being aware, being cognizant of your triggers, being cognizant of when you are stressed out is fundamental, because if you're unaware that you are stressed, you're going to have reactions that are going to come to you as a surprise. So for example, the emotional reactions to stress would be feeling irritable, feeling excessively tired, so fatigue, lack of energy, excessively sleeping or excessively eating or not sleeping, regardless of how tired you may be, or not being tired because you're actually not investing any energy throughout the day. Being aware of excessive aggression or irritability or anger, or being cognizant of your reactions to other people and the situations that are happening around you. Emotional, so those were the emotional reactions to stress. Now, physical reactions to stress are numerous to mention. So palpitations, migraines, nausea, tingling in your arms, in your fingers, in your feet, just an overall feeling of malaise in general, feeling unable to breathe, or shortness of breath, or feeling a choking sensation right here in your throat, which is referred to as globus hystericus. It's just a sensation, not actually that there's anything there constricting you. These are all symptoms, physical, not all, they're not exhaustive by any means. There are various different physical symptoms of stress as well. Now, we talked about last time, if you remember, that with respect to stress, people with chronic pain who have additional stress, compounding stress on top of the stress that they currently have on a regular basis because of their pain, is further exacerbated. Now, obviously, stress management is fundamental and is important for everyone. However, if you are someone who suffers from chronic pain, being cognizant of the level of stress in your life can make the difference between whether you're going to be able to cope or not cope. So, the stress hormone, the hormone that's responsible for stress, is cortisol. So when our cortisol levels are up here and we're unable to get to a balance or an equilibrium, or to come down here, that's when the stress hormone kicks in and we feel all those symptoms that I just mentioned. Now, I'd like to make a distinction between acute stress and good stress. So acute stress that happens, for example, could be an accident, a divorce, a job loss, something that happens in the moment and you have an immediate reaction to it. Now, good stress can also happen in the moment, getting a new job, moving to a new house, getting married, a special event. Despite the fact that these are positive events on the surface, however, they can still elicit feelings of stress depending on who that person is. Again, this is all relative to what kind of pain you have, how long you've had it, what kind of medications you're on, what kind of people are in your life. So there are many different factors that determine your reaction to it. So some level of stress is not necessarily a bad thing, because it kind of gives you a kick in terms of getting started on what you want to do or accomplishing your tasks. If you have zero stress, which I don't think anyone is completely stress-free, but that can also affect your motivation. So a little bit of stress to get you going, but not to the point where it consumes you and you are unable, it becomes debilitating with respect to being able to accomplish your goals. So the exacerbation of stress we talked about with respect to chronic pain, if you're already in pain, you're stressed out about being in pain. Now, if you have an event or you have something that happens to you that you're upset about and you have a reaction, your pain is further intensified. So you're not going to be more relaxed, you're going to be more in pain, more stressed out. Again, be cognizant of your individual triggers to stress, depending on what they may be. Not everyone has the same response. Again, we talked about threshold, capacity, and resiliency. People have different levels of resiliency, again, depending on where they're coming from in life. So if you have a good support system, that's amazing and you're lucky. However, if you don't, that might be something that actually compounds your stress in the long term. Now, in terms of managing stress, there are two different forms of managing stress. One is referred to maladaptive coping strategies for stress and adaptive coping strategies for stress. So I'm going to talk about the adaptive ones first before I talk about the maladaptive. So adaptive means they're positive ways of dealing with stress. For example, getting enough sleep, getting enough exercise, eating adequately. What I mean by that is nutrition is important, that you're cognizant of. So not snacking on things that are high in sugar, that are high in caffeine on a regular basis. Because that ultimately, if you're really, really hungry and you have a sugary snack, in that moment, it's satiating, it's satisfying. You've now fulfilled an urge. However, these are empty calories and you're going to feel further tired, and that feeling of ease doesn't stay very long. So you need to replenish again. So again, more sugar, again, you crash. So being aware of what you're consuming on a regular basis is also very important. Now, talking to people and sharing your experiences, I think I touched on that last time. That comes with a slight caveat. While it is important to share how you feel with the person you live with, your significant other, your spouse, whoever, whatever term we're using nowadays, whoever that may be, while it's important to share how you feel, you might want to be cautious about the extent that you share, the amount that you share, what you share. Keep in mind that the person you live with probably has his or her own stress. And also your stress to them might not be, they might think you're having an overreaction, or here again, you're catastrophizing, your reaction is disproportionate. Their capacity might already be full. So it might be a better idea to share with someone else, such as a friend or someone that you trust, before you continuously confide in the person you live with. Again, I'm not saying that never ever confide in your spouse, your significant other. I'm just saying that keep in mind that you might not get the reaction that you necessarily want. So the person who doesn't live with you is not dealing with your stresses on a day-to-day basis. They're not hearing about your pain. They're not hearing about your frustration. They're not hearing about your hopelessness and your restlessness or your absolute resignation with respect to your situation. They're going to have a greater capacity, hopefully, in order to be able to hear you. So sharing is important, but depending on who we share with and the extent that we share to. Another thing that's important is organizing your life, prioritizing, time management, knowing your limitations. So there are a lot of people who have chronic pain. There are some people who don't want to push themselves at all, and we have two extremes. So people who don't want to do anything and people who want to do too much. So both are obviously not effective in terms of dealing with your everyday life. So being aware of your limitations is important, because if you're pushing yourself too much, you will crash and you'll be moving backwards, which also leads to further feelings of depression, inactivity, and further lack of motivation, and feeling defeated, right? So if you feel that you are pushing yourself too much, and you will know that by being aware of your triggers that I mentioned earlier. So if you're a little more irritable, you're a little more angry, you're more impatient, you're having other symptoms such as frequent headaches or nausea or palpitations, etc., that might be a key indication or red flag that you're pushing yourself too much. Now, by contrast, the people who are not doing anything at all might not experience those feelings of stress because they're not engaging in stressful activities. So you might want to find a balance that meets your needs and that's relative to you and relevant to you in the moment. One of the other things that I think is helpful is, which I will be talking about later on, is meditation, mindfulness, relaxation, stretching. Again, exercise, I will emphasize vehemently, that is absolutely, absolutely fundamental. So when we're stressed out, we obviously have more symptoms of anxiety and could have symptoms of depression depending on what the situation may be. Again, serotonin, the hormone responsible for upping your mood, the hormone that is released through anti-anxiety medication and antidepressants, is the same hormone that is released when you exercise. So if your cortisol levels are up here, when you exercise, you release that tension and you bring that cortisol level down to a more manageable level, reaching equilibrium, helping you sleep at night. So melatonin, which helps you calm down, relax, and sleep, your body naturally produces it. But if your cortisol levels are too high, then it's almost like your melatonin level is negated. So in order to have that in balance, exercise, try to get enough sleep as possible. Avoid stressful situations. I don't think that's realistic. We can't avoid stressful situations. It's all encompassing. It's all around us. So how do we avoid? We can't. However, there are some situations that can be avoided. If there's a situation that you really don't have to engage in, whether it's helping someone with an event you really feel like you can't, here's where you might want to learn to say no. There are people who have issues with saying no. They don't want to say no. They don't want to disappoint anybody. But remember, your first priority needs to be your health. If you have chronic pain, whoever you're dealing with in your life would probably understand that. And if they don't, well, then maybe they need a little lesson in empathy and understanding. So the point is, don't overextend yourself and don't underextend yourself as well, because I mentioned before, inactivity is also something that contributes to excessive pain and exacerbates your pain as well. So if you're just sitting on the couch, you're not going to get any better. If you're moving around too much, you're not watching out, you're going to get worse. So what we're looking for here, bottom line, is balance. In contrast to adaptive coping mechanisms, maladaptive coping mechanisms can be anything from excessive use of caffeine, smoking, consumption of sugar, overconsumption of alcohol, illicit drugs. These are all things that would bring you, on a downer when you're stressed out. Now, I'm not saying that smoking, alcohol consumption, even illicit drugs should never be used at all. The disclaimer is that everything has to be in balance. Realistically speaking, I don't think it's realistic to say never do these things. No. But if you're doing them continuously, if you're doing them incessantly, it's going to be doing more harm than good. Now, in addition to that, correspondingly, if you have chronic pain and you're on different kinds of medication, it might be important to ascertain whether or not you can actually use alcohol or illicit drugs. So checking with your doctor in terms of what kind of medications counteract with alcohol could really make a difference in your recovery and in your day-to-day ability to manage your life. So one of the other things I want to mention with respect to stress, again, I think I had mentioned before, and just to reiterate the idea that you can't avoid all stress or any stress. However, you can make choices in terms of what you're going to engage in. There are some things that are out of your control that may happen to you, but there are some things that are actually within your control. So don't overextend yourself. Make sure you prioritize. Learn to say no. There's nothing wrong with saying no. Again, don't use that as an excuse or justification for inactivity as well. So thank you very much for watching. Thanks for the support. Please don't forget to press like and subscribe. See you next week for session 7.